Welcome back to Bigjuicyhog Gaming. Today we're diving into one of the most terrifying, calculating, and absurdly powerful beings in all of Shadowrun. We're talking about a creature who doesn't just hoard gold in some mountain cave like dragons of old. No, this dragon looks at the corporate landscape of the Sixth World and decided that true power wasn't measured in treasure, but in stock portfolios, hostile takeovers, and quarterly earnings reports. I'm talking about Loafwir, the great dragon who literally bought his way to the top of the corporate food chain and became the living embodiment of everything that makes the megacorporations terrifying. This is a dragon who plays the game of capitalism better than any human ever could, and he's been doing it for longer than most corporations have existed. So buckle up, chummers, because we're about to explore the legend of the dragon who conquered the world not with fire and claw, but with leverage and market manipulation. To understand Loafwir, we need to go back to the beginning, back to 2011, when magic returned to the world in an event known as the Awakening. The world changed overnight. Humans began manifesting as elves, dwarves, orcs, and trolls. Ancient spirits stirred from millennia of slumber. And most terrifyingly of all, the great dragons returned. These weren't just oversized lizards. The great dragons were beings of immense power, ancient intelligence, and magical might that made even the most powerful mages look like children playing with matches. They had lived through ages long forgotten, witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations, and now they were back in a world that had evolved far beyond what they remembered. Loafwir revealed himself in March 2012, emerging from the shadows to announce his presence to a world that had forgotten dragons were anything more than myths and legends. While meta-humanity scrambled to understand what the return of dragons meant, Loafwir was already planning his next move. See, while other dragons were content to establish lairs in remote mountains, to gather cults of followers, or to operate from the shadows, pulling strings on politicians and corporate executives, Loafwir saw something different. He saw the megacorporations, those massive entities that had grown to replace nations as the true power structures of the world, and he recognized them for what they were, the perfect vehicle for draconic ambition in the modern age. What makes Loafwir fundamentally different from many of his draconic brethren is his philosophy towards power. Traditional dragons hoarded wealth, yes, but they viewed it as something to be possessed, to be slept upon in vast caverns deep within the earth. Loafwir understood that in the Sixth World, static wealth was meaningless. Capital had to work. It had to grow. It had to dominate. He looked at the corporate structure and saw it as the ultimate expression of predatory evolution. The megacorporations were dragons themselves in a way. Massive entities that consumed smaller companies and hoarded resources, that defended their territories with private armies and ruthless legal departments. They were perfectly adapted to the modern world in a way that fire-breathing and wing-beating simply weren't. Loafwir didn't see becoming a corporate CEO as lowering himself to human concerns. He saw it as elevating the concept of the corporation to its truest form by putting an actual apex predator at its head. Where other dragons saw the modern world as something foreign and distasteful, Loafwir recognized it as an environment he could not just survive in, but absolutely dominate. The tools were different, certainly. Instead of magic and raw physical might, the weapons were stock manipulations, hostile acquisitions, vertical integration, and market control. But the game was the same game dragons had always played. Accumulate power, eliminate rivals, and never ever show weakness. The years 2037 and 2038 would go down in corporate history as the period when a dragon proved that even the mightiest megacorporations weren't immune to a predator with enough cunning and capital. The target was BMW, which had evolved into a massive German industrial powerhouse. Under Michael Beloit's leadership in the early 2000s, BMW had merged with Saeder Munitions and Saeder-Krupp to create an industrial empire with global reach and enough economic and military might to rival small nations. After Beloit's death in 2032, his wife Wilhelmina Graf Beloit took control and proved to be capable CEO. The corporation was powerful, entrenched, and seemingly untouchable. Loafwir looked at it and saw his future empire. What happened next was a masterclass in corporate warfare that's still studied in business schools and by Shadowrunners playing their own corporate raids. Loafwir began quietly acquiring stock in BMW through a web of shell companies, proxy investors, and intermediaries so complex that even the corporation's own intelligence division didn't see the pattern until it was far too late. He leveraged his immense personal wealth, accumulated over centuries of careful investment and strategic positioning, to purchase a staggering 63% of the corporation's outstanding shares. But here's where it gets beautiful in its audacity. In 2037, Loafwir didn't just send lawyers to a boardroom. He physically arrived at corporate headquarters. Picture this: the board of directors, some of the most powerful corporate executives in the world, sitting in their pristine conference room, probably reviewing quarterly reports and planning their next fiscal moves. Then Loafwir walks in, appearing as a distinguished human with steel gray hair and golden eyes, and calmly announces that he now owns 63% of their company. Before anyone can process this information, he transforms. The meta-human form melts away, and suddenly the boardroom is filled with a massive golden-scaled great dragon, wings spreading, eyes glowing with ancient intelligence, and barely contained power. He then asks with perfect calm if anyone has any questions. The sitting CEO, Wilhelmina Graf Beloit, took one look at the dragon, who now held controlling stock, and realized her position was untenable. She was voted off the board. No severance negotiation, no golden parachute demands, just a quiet removal while she still could. Loafwir used his shares to vote himself president and CEO. By 2038, through a management buyout, he acquired nearly 100% of the company. He restructured the corporation entirely, renaming it Saeder-Krupp and relocating the headquarters to Essen in the Rhine-Ruhr megaplex. Within less than 2 years, Loafwir had transformed from a dragon operating in shadows to the CEO and major shareholder of what would become the world's most powerful megacorporation. It was a hostile takeover in the most literal sense possible, executed with a combination of financial acumen and the implicit threat of overwhelming force that only a great dragon could bring to the table. Once Loafwir took control of Saeder-Krupp, he didn't just maintain it, he transformed it. Under his leadership, the corporation evolved from a merely powerful megacorp into the dominant force in European industry and one of the most fearsome entities on the global stage. His management style was exactly what you'd expect from a dragon who had lived for thousands of years and had zero tolerance for the inefficiencies and petty politics that plagued human-run corporations. Loafwir reorganized Saeder-Krupp with ruthless efficiency. Underperforming divisions were either fixed or eliminated entirely. Executives who couldn't meet his exacting standards found themselves out on the street, their careers destroyed with the same casual indifference a human might show swatting a fly. Those who proved their competence and loyalty were rewarded handsomely, because Loafwir understood that talented servants were valuable assets worth maintaining. But make no mistake, they were always his servants, never partners. The dragon sat at the top of the pyramid, alone and unchallenged. Under his guidance, Saeder-Krupp expanded aggressively into every profitable section imaginable. Heavy industry and manufacturing had always been the corporation's bread and butter, but Loafwir pushed into weapons development and created some of the most advanced military hardware available on the market. He established security divisions that rivaled private armies. He funded magical research that pushed the boundaries of what was possible in the awakened world. Aerospace technology, media conglomerates, resource extraction, pharmaceutical. If there was a profit to be made and power to be gained, Saeder-Krupp was there, and behind it all was the calculating mind of a dragon who thought in terms of centuries rather than quarters. His corporate headquarters became legendary in its own right. The Saeder-Krupp arcology in Essen, built into the Rhine-Ruhr megaplex, and incorporating his personal lair, became a fortress that combined cutting-edge security technology with ancient magical wards. Imagine being a corporate executive flying in for a meeting with your CEO, and as you're escorted through the complex, you realize that you're not just in an office building, you're in a dragon's lair. The conference rooms are carved from living rock. The CEO's office has a hoard of priceless artifacts visible in adjacent chambers. And somewhere in the back of your mind, you're aware that if the meeting goes badly, you're not just getting fired. You're in a mountain, miles from civilization, surrounded by security forces loyal to a creature that could incinerate you with its breath. What truly makes Loafwir terrifying isn't his physical power or his vast wealth. It's his mind. This is a being of immense, ancient intelligence combined with absolute rationality and zero emotional attachment to anything except his own interests. When Loafwir makes a decision, it's a result of calculations that take into account variables most metahumans wouldn't even consider. He thinks 10 steps ahead, 20 steps ahead, planning contingencies for contingencies while his opponents are still trying to figure out his opening move. He embodies draconic arrogance, but tempers it with German efficiency and a pragmatic understanding of how the modern world operates. He doesn't need to prove his superiority through theatrical displays of power. His quarterly earnings reports do that for him. He doesn't waste energy on petty vendettas or emotional responses. When he destroys a rival corporation or eliminates a threat, it's not personal. It's simply optimal business decision. You weren't destroyed because he hated you. You were destroyed because you were inefficient, unprofitable, or in the way of something he wanted. This cold rationality makes him incredibly dangerous to deal with. You can't appeal to his emotions because he doesn't make emotional decisions. You can't manipulate him with flattery or intimidation because he sees through such transparent attempts immediately. You can't even hope that he'll make a mistake born of arrogance or anger, because Loafwir doesn't make those kinds of mistakes. He's had thousands of years to master self-control and strategic thinking. By the time you realize you're playing against him, he's already won. His expectations for his subordinates are brutally high. Loafwir demands absolute excellence in all things. Incompetence isn't just punished, it's eliminated with extreme prejudice. But here's the thing. He's not unreasonable. If you're good at what you do, if you deliver results and prove your value, Loafwir will reward you and protect you as the valuable asset you are. The problem is that his definition of good enough is calibrated to the standards of a 1,000-year-old super-intelligent dragon. What looks like exceptional performance on a human might barely register as adequate to Loafwir. Loafwir's relationships with other great dragons are complex and fascinating. In the Sixth World, the great dragons play what's often called the Great Game, a multi-dimensional chess match of schemes, manipulations, and power plays that spans the globe and operates on timescales that would make human strategic planners weep. Each dragon has their own methods, their own territories, and their own long-term goals that they pursue with single-minded determination. Many dragons view Loafwir's corporate obsession with a mixture of respect and disdain. Some see his willingness to personally run a megacorporation as beneath the dignity of a great dragon. They believe dragons should operate from the shadows, pulling strings and manipulating events without sullying themselves with day-to-day management and quarterly earnings calls. To them, Loafwir has lowered himself to playing by metahuman rules in a metahuman game. Loafwir's response to such criticism, if he bothered to offer one, would likely be to point at his balance sheets. While other dragons hide in their lairs and manipulate pawns, he's built an empire that operates openly in the light of day and dominates the global economy. His power isn't hidden, it doesn't need to be. It's so overwhelming that it doesn't matter if everyone knows exactly who's in charge. But other dragons recognize his genius. They see that he's adapted perfectly to the modern world in a way that makes him incredibly dangerous. He's taken the tools of the Sixth World and weaponized them more effectively than any metahuman ever could. And because he operates so openly through Saeder-Krupp, he's actually harder to move against than dragons who lurk in the shadow. Any attack on Loafwir is an attack on one of the world's most powerful megacorporations, which means dealing with not just draconic retaliation, but also corporate security forces, legal warfare, and economic sanctions. His rivalry with Lung is particularly legendary. Lung is another great dragon who saw the value in corporate power and established control over the Pacific Prosperity Group. You have two great dragons, two massive megacorporations, and the entire Pacific Rim as their chessboard. Their conflict plays out in corporate proxy wars, economic manipulation, and shadowruns targeting each other's assets. When Saeder-Krupp and the Pacific Prosperity Group clash in the market, it's not just corporate competition, it's two ancient predators circling each other, probing for weakness, testing defenses, and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The scary part? These draconic corporate wars aren't fought with armies and bombs, at least not directly. They're fought with market manipulation that can crash entire regional economies. They've fought with Shadowrun teams hired to steal proprietary technology or assassinate key executives. They fought with media campaigns, legal maneuvering, and political influence that reshapes government policies. The collateral damage isn't measured in bodies, but in ruined lives, destroyed careers, and economic devastation that spreads like ripples from their conflicts. For Shadowrunners, Saeder-Krupp represents one of the most dangerous targets in the entire Sixth World. Running against any AAA megacorp is risky, but running against Saeder-Krupp means you're not just facing corporate security. You're facing an organization led by a being with thousands of years of experience in warfare, strategy, and eliminating threats. The security at Saeder-Krupp facilities is state-of-the-art. We're talking military-grade hardware, magical defenses designed by some of the best hermetic mages money can buy, riggers with top-tier drones, and security personnel who are trained to a level that would make special forces operators jealous. But that's just the physical security. The real nightmare is the intelligence division. Saeder-Krupp's information network is terrifying in its reach and effectiveness. They have assets in law enforcement, in rival corporations, in governments. They monitor communications, they track financial transactions, they have facial recognition tied into security cameras across multiple countries. And behind all of it is Loafwir himself. Here's what keeps smart Shadowrunners up at night. The knowledge that if their run against Saeder-Krupp is significant enough, if they pose enough of a threat or steal something valuable enough, they might draw the personal attention of a great dragon. And once you have a dragon's attention, you don't just have a problem. You have a death sentence that's just waiting for the optimal moment to be executed. Loafwir doesn't forget, he doesn't forgive, and he's patient in ways that metahumans simply can't comprehend. You might think you got away with your run against his corporation. You might celebrate your success, spend your payoff, and move on to the next job. But 5 years later, 10 years later, when you let your guard down and think you're safe, that's when Saeder-Krupp's assets move against you. Not in rage, not in vengeance, but simply because Loafwir's long-term planning has finally identified the optimal moment to eliminate you as a variable in his calculations. The smart Shadowrunners, the ones who survive in the business, they have a rule. They don't run against Saeder-Krupp unless the pay is astronomical and they have an exit strategy that involves leaving the continent. Even then, many won't take the job, because no amount of Nuyen is worth having a dragon remember your face. Loafwir represents something profound about the world of Shadowrun. He's the ultimate expression of how power operates in the Sixth World. In this dystopian future, the megacorporations have supplanted governments as the real power structures, and Loafwir proves that even these massive entities are just tools to be wielded by those smart and ruthless enough to seize them. He's a reminder that in Shadowrun, the most dangerous threats aren't always the ones you can shoot. Sometimes the real danger is the CEO who can destroy your life with a phone call, who can erase your identity with a few keystrokes, who can make you disappear without ever leaving their office. And when the CEO is a great dragon with millennia of experience and absolutely no moral compunctions about eliminating obstacles, you're facing something that no amount of cyberware or combat training can protect you from. What makes Loafwir such a compelling figure in the lore is that he's proof that intelligence and strategic thinking can be more powerful than raw magical might or physical strength. Yes, he's a massive fire-breathing dragon who could level city blocks if he wanted to, but he doesn't need to. He can just buy the city block, foreclose on your mortgage, tank your credit rating, and have you living on the streets without ever showing his true form. The threat of draconic violence is always there, lurking beneath the surface, but the actual exercise of power is far more subtle and far more devastating. He's also a cautionary tale about adaptation and evolution. While other dragons clung to old ways of operating, hiding in shadows and working through intermediaries, Loafwir recognized that the world had changed, and he changed with it. He took the tools of the modern age and mastered them so completely that he became more dangerous than ever. It's a lesson that applies to anyone trying to survive in the Sixth World. Adapt or become irrelevant. So there you have it, runners. Loafwir, the great dragon who looked at the corporate world and didn't just join it, but conquered it. He's a being who has lived for thousands of years, who has seen empires rise and fall, and who decided that megacorporations of the Sixth World were the perfect vehicle for his ambitions. He's proof that sometimes the most terrifying monster isn't the one with the biggest teeth, but the one with the biggest bank account and the coldest calculation behind every decision. In a world of Shadowrunners, corporate espionage, and magical mayhem, Loafwir stands as a reminder that the ultimate power doesn't come from the barrel of a gun or the casting of a spell. It comes from owning the company that makes the guns and employs the mages. It comes from being so entrenched in the power structures of society that you don't just play the game, you are the game. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Shadowrun lore, smash that like button and subscribe to Bigjuicyhog Gaming for more explorations of the dark, dangerous world of the Sixth World. Drop a comment and let me know, would you take a run against Saeder-Krupp for the right price, or is some Nuyen just not worth the risk of having a dragon remember your face? And what other Shadowrun lore would you like to see covered on the channel? Stay sharp out there, chummers. Watch your back, shoot straight, conserve ammo, and above all, never ever make a deal with a dragon, because in the end, the dragon always wins.